Hello there folks, welcome back to my YouTube channel, a place where I discuss different topics about spirituality, introspection, deeper understanding and coming up with different approaches towards understanding things. And what I want to discuss on today is the idea of, a question that came to my mind recently about what we know being correct or wrong. Now, yes, I have also been inspired, but indirectly by Weird Al Yankovic's song "Everything You Know Is Wrong." Now, the point about this is, this wasn't necessarily the source of inspiration, the main source. It was just a question that popped up into my mind recently, and I said, okay, I'm gonna try answering this question as well, because why not? Like, as I've been doing up till today, I've been providing people with a lot of wisdom of mine. I have provided people with some answers to their questions, and it's time I actually answered this as well. So, to many people, the idea of whatever they know being wrong is gonna sound like tremendously awe-inspiring, I can say, because why wouldn't it sound so? I mean, everything that most people know kind of supports the existence of their persona, which is nothing else than a survival mechanism, and this persona of theirs requires a lot of stories, right? As I've been saying, every time you accept a certain idea, it's like you turn that idea into a deity, and then all your stories that you are building are nothing else than preachers that support the existence of those ideas of yours. Okay, so all these being said, the point is very simple. Everything you think Everything you think you know is technically nothing else than pieces of, or ideas, not necessarily pieces, but ideas that you have accepted, and in most situations without even conducting any discernment towards those. Now, we know also that up till the certain age of 7-8 years, children are very, how to put this exactly, children are very their minds simply have little to no discernment, okay? And the brain also vibrates at a high frequency, which makes it defenseless when it comes to ideas. So technically, whatever your parents tell you in childhood, you're gonna live by those as by example, because the psychology of children is that children see their parents as some kind of gods, because they are older and supposedly they are much wiser. Okay, so the point about this is everything that we know to a certain extent may actually be wrong. Now, not everything that we know may necessarily be wrong in a certain way, but the way we employ it, the way we use it, may be theoretically wrong. Okay, because let's focus on generalization, for example, what I call the greatest psychiatric disease of this century, the idea of generalization. Only, primitives, or what I call them, like, only primitives generalize, or probably, yes, because of a very low awareness, a lot of people actually have this painful idea that, hey, you know what, just because someone did a certain thing, everyone would do that. And it's okay to a certain extent if simple people do this, but painfully speaking, it's also done in science, and science is technically nothing more than this kind of awkward interpretation of life, and this awkward interpretation of life is nothing else than an interpretation, because many people have discovered some things about this planet, but they're already focusing on the entirety of the universe. But if you don't know the roots of who you are and the roots of your own homeworld, how can you actually discover things about the planet itself? Then furthermore of the universe itself, okay? because many times people start with the assumption that they know a certain thing, and then they continue with that idea, and they always look so baffled when things don't go their way. It's like wrong to the roots. But again, people require a certain level of awareness to understand and understand this. Why I'm saying this is very simple. The point is, people start with the assumption that everything in the universe follows the exact same physical rules that are followed by this planet. You have to understand that this planet is nothing else than a preset set of rules. Okay, this planet has its own rules, yes, but any other planet might have different other rules. Water may be boiling and freezing at different I don't know, it can actually freeze and boil at completely different temperatures, because each atmosphere is technically the set of rules. Okay, the planet itself is a set of rules because it also has its magnetic fields, it also has its inner cores, and everything impacts everything. It's a machine created of billions of parts, and each conducts its own influence over the others. That's the point with planets. Now, the planet is nothing else than a speck of dust in the solar system, and the solar system is not only planets. Okay, there are many other life forms in there. Now, again, depends how you want to view things. To me, everything has a life of its own, because life doesn't have to be biological. Okay, science also states that life has to be biological, but look, for example, at viruses. Okay, they are a middle finger to scientists because, well, viruses are biological, but hey, they are called as not alive because those viruses technically don't have an innate ability to reproduce. But the question is, why aren't they alive? They are still moving around, okay, even if in most situations the environment is kind of moving them around, but even if they are 1 million times smaller than a human cell, and technically they're nothing else than a strand of RNA with a capsid or whatever it's called, a layer that protects at least a part of that RNA structure, the point is, that thing, you may call it dead or not, but the point is that thing can actually kill you. And the way it kills you is in a very lively way, because whatever it does, it does. And if it actually does something, it's actually alive. The very fact that energy moves around, there is something called intelligence that allows that energy to act in the way it does. Everything that occurs, okay, happens because there is a tremendous force beyond the physical. Okay, that force, we may call it as intelligence. Okay, the very way that flowers open their petals, okay, or follow the sun, right, the sunlight, that is a certain amount of this intelligence that is going on. It's exactly like the code that is running behind the visuality of the video game. Okay, the video game the players perceive is nothing else than a set of images that give the impression of 3D. If the game would be 3D, there is no such thing as 3D graphics. It's just, graphics that are done in such a way that they give you a very acute sense of looking in 3D, but the graphics that you're seeing in there is not, that graphic is nothing else than layered to the images that are put one over the other based on the player's proximity to those things. So technically what you are seeing is nothing else than a layer of 2D images arranging themselves in such a way that they give you the impression it's 3D. But you have to understand that graphic is still 2D to a certain extent, because whatever you see on a screen which is flat, you don't see on a cube. And secondarily, the way our visual organ perceives is 2D because the image is, formed on the back of our eyes, and it's formed on an almost flat surface. Okay, the brain also perceives that image as 2D. Okay, now the point about that is, three-dimensional is kind of nothing else than a concept we have created. What if we are actually living in a kind of virtual reality where technically we, the ones who are, our greater selves, let's say like that, are asleep in some kind of beds, okay, and the graphics that we actually see are kind of injected in our real eyes by some kind of devices, and these avatars that we move and have the impression that we are so realistically moving are, well, nothing else than, well, a very convincing reality, a very convincing illusion. So the point is, starting by that premise, everything that we see is technically 2D, but again following the rules of video games, okay? Based on a certain distance between us and the other things, what we see is technically a layer, okay? Now these layers, again, they have 3 dimensions to a certain way, but again, I want to underline the fact that 3D is nothing else than a illusion, okay? It's nothing else than a construct we have created, and just as I've been saying in previous videos, we have created the deity called 3D, and all the stories, ideas, and experiences we've had are just like preachers we've been creating and expanding the cult that supports this idea, right? And they are just there at the back of our minds, constantly, supporting that idea, constantly praising that idea, and again we end up believing that, and we kind of do that again and again and again. Now the point about this is, well, I cannot simply call this as wrong, okay? Everything is correct, because the moment it belongs to your base of experience, it is true because it happened to you. Be it that you have seen a ghost and you've told other people and they call you nuts, whatever you have experienced, it actually existed. Your mind simply caught a glimpse of another possible dimension of itself, and that's how you caught a glimpse of discarnate beings who are beyond this physical realm. I've also gotten the chance to catch glimpses of those, and even if I didn't see them like specifically, I knew how I knew their height, I knew how their shape was, and I could even see certain things that they're doing. In the case of, for example, two, which were like speaking one to another, and well, funnily speaking, they were actually talking about me, and well, I could understand to a certain extent that one was angry, one was supportive of me, or something like that. And I had the impression that beyond those two persons was some kind of a lab, the continuation actually, because this is how dimensions overlap. Now the point about this is, we don't need to get mad about that, okay? We don't need to get afraid of this, because, well, everything works to a certain extent towards bettering ourselves and towards bettering our perception. Now in terms of science, I recently dropped a video about science being nothing else than a promoter of our survival. Well, not necessarily a promoter, but it's something that is triggered in a way and maintained by our survival. We are still following this sense of wanting a better life, and it's all coming from our ego. How I know this is, well, look around. We have so much technology that can literally do almost everything for us, and it's like we don't have anything, okay? We're taking everything for granted because we haven't been taught to understand ourselves, right? And the moment we don't know ourselves, the funny thing is, how can we actually understand greater things? We barely know, like, let's say 20% about the planet, and furthermore, we don't even know, I think, 15% of our brain's potential, but we are always ready to understand the universe, right? And we come up with all sorts of ideas about black holes and the such, and the point is, we haven't ever seen a black hole. We only have seen the area of influence around it, so black holes are not called black for nothing, okay? But technically black holes are nothing, okay? There is pure force in there, there is pure nothingness in there. Although to a certain extent, well, actually not to a certain extent, black holes are also conscious beings who have a predefined purpose. Now the point about black holes is, well, if you say this to scientific communities, most likely they will laugh in your face, because who can actually accept the idea that black holes are, alive, and well, they have a certain life of theirs, although at the same time they are nothing? Because scientists kind of still are stuck in the idea that life can only be biological, and that to a certain extent we are the best in this universe, which is again a dumb way of thinking things. And again, is science in this way is employed only as a survival of their own persona, because people get stuck in certain ideas, and what you believe is technically what your being would die for in order to support. Now the question about this is, okay, now if you are supporting some ideas to the extent that you'd even die for, what's the wrong about what's the worth of having debates? That is why many debates end up as heated, because everyone strongly believes in their ideas, but everyone is so rigid. No one would ever accept something else, another opinion about, anything else. Technically someone else's idea, someone else's opinion, someone else's points, because the ideas that they have entrenched themselves in, again, those big deities that their stories and knowledge support, right, and preach. The point about that is what I'm feeling is nothing else than this sensation of what's in it for me. And again, it is survival. Every person, to a certain extent, still suffers from this impression because of their low self-esteem. They suffer from this impression that they would be someone very special on this planet, that they are, and they are who they are, some kind of center of the universe. So the problem is with people vibrating at such low vibrations, right? The problem is they won't simply understand many things, and if they would, they wouldn't even want to go beyond what they know, because that's their comfort level. They wouldn't want to embrace other things because it would go far beyond their own awareness. Okay, now this awareness is well, it differs per individual in the first place, and when this awareness ends up as being one's comfort zone, well, that is kind of problematic, because the person will get stuck in there and their survival will be confronted with supporting and constantly supporting this idea. That is why you have so many people in this world that do nothing else than just support the same old ideas, even if they know they don't serve them anymore. They just prefer, like, desperately supporting those ideas because it's their comfort zone. And many scientists actually end up like this, and they will always find it hard to accept someone else's opinion, because there will also be this idea, what's in it for me, right? These ideas that I'm supporting, they're already ensuring my survival, and they're already good for who and what I am. Okay, it's always this idea of good, there's always this idea of survival, there's always this point of the ego, because many people are just slaves of their ego. So the point about this seeking of survival is that, well, to a certain extent, it's gonna help you, but beyond that, you're always gonna struggle, you're always gonna have trouble accepting something else, because you're not gonna want to ditch your ideas, because you're so deeply entrenched into their meaning, into the story of those ideas. That is why so many people accept that the physics and the things that we have discovered regarding our planet, they are, like, generally applicable, right? Nebulae follow the same principles, stars follow the same principles, and what we are doing is nothing else than old folks may do, or anyone like that would do. People who just stay in their homes and point their fingers at other people, and they already know what those people are thinking and doing, but they don't even leave their house, and they don't even know those people, but they're just pointing ideas at them because they have this sense that they know those. We're exactly the same. Okay, we have barely explored the oceans of this planet, and these are like 70% of the surface, and we barely know shit about those, and we barely invest in saving those oceans, and we already think we know, like, everything about marine wildlife, right? We have barely explored the underdepths of this planet, right? And the question is, like, how do we actually got to know everything regarding those, right? Like, who's inventing all these stories that we would know something about our planet? And then we haven't ventured in this solar system outside, and those stories that are said that we have this probe that already left the solar system. Okay, maybe it left the solar system, but we as humans haven't seen a star up close. Okay, even our sun, we just give certain ideas about our sun, we don't even know what that is. And I'm having my thoughts telling me that the sun is nothing else than, well, a Dyson sphere that leads to different other dimensions. But again, people will call you crazy if you would believe something like this. Okay, so it's nothing else than an artificial star supported by a very powerful source, and it also acts as a portal towards different dimensions, and it's also the portal that previous the previous civilizations required to move from this earth once they ascended, so that they would guide us. Okay, probably they failed as civilizations, they met their extinction or whatever, or they simply ascended and there was nothing else for them to experience, and now many of those are actually coming back to guide humanity and make sure they don't fail as well, or they just don't fail. We don't know whether the previous civilizations reached a certain peak and then they failed due to inner struggles and the such. That is why there will always be a requirement of each aspect of the life to be improved. If you are too scientific and you ignore your spirituality, you will reach a certain level in which your life will no longer be important. If you are fully spiritual and you're not scientific and you're not bent on exploring the physicality and the beauty of the physicality of these planets, again you're gonna live only a part of your life. Neither of these two paths is wrong. You're still exploring something, but you're denying yourself the greater that can actually be explored. Now, all this being said, hopefully you've liked this type of content that I'm creating. Feel free to like and subscribe, hit that notification bell. Feel free to come up with your own ideas and present them in the comment sections below. Feel free to ask me questions about certain things, and I may follow with a video on that as well. I prefer being audience guided and presenting a certain amount of things and then having people ask questions, several questions, so I may weave my answer in such a way that I take into account as many of the questions as possible. All this being said, take care of yourselves, take care of your loved ones. You are loved and appreciated, and whatever you're doing is the best you can at the right pace for you. Take care of yourself, take care of your loved ones. Ferenc Board signing out.